I'd like to introduce Carol from the United States, who uses LDN for multiple sclerosis. Thank you for joining me, Carol.
You're welcome. I'm glad to be here.
Could you tell me when you were diagnosed with MS?
I was officially diagnosed in 1994, and I was 26 years old.
Okay, and what symptoms were you experiencing around that time?
At that time, I would have strange sensations of heat in my skin, especially on my back, and it was sensations, like I would put my arm on a table and it would feel like it was burning up, even though it was in air conditioning and would have been cool to a normal person's touch. I was also experiencing left foot drop and my left leg dragging.
Right. What were your symptoms like before you found LDN, just before you found it?
The MS had progressed to a point where I can only walk with a walker for very short distances, and my hand dexterity is very poor.
What about, your bladder and things like that?
Oh yes, I do have bladder issues. Very frequent urination for me. Yes.
And what about fatigue?
Fatigue seems to be okay.
Well, that's good. And how did you hear about LDN?
I came across it looking at the internet, looking for alternative ways to manage multiple sclerosis.
And what year did you start LDN?
2010.
And who prescribed it for you?
My neurologist.
Oh, that was good. And when you first started, did you notice any initial side effects?
No, nothing.
And how long did it take before you noticed any improvements?
It was immediate.
In what way? What did it do for you?
For me, it definitely lessened my spasticity in my legs. So it made walking easier.
And did it help with the sensations that you were experiencing?
They stopped back at the beginning, and I really haven't had them since. So there really isn't any difference as a result of being on LDN for those symptoms.
What about your bladder? Did LDN help with that?
I would have to say mildly. It hasn't helped it completely, but there is improvement.
So how would you say your life is now compared with how it was before you started the LDN?
I would say that it's definitely improving, and I'm working on rebuilding. I did have a very, very bad relapse last year that actually put me out for about 4 months. And I think that was due to taking a bad batch of LDN.
Right. And what would you say to other people who are contemplating trying LDN?
I would tell them, try it. It can't hurt, and it definitely helps, or at least it helps me. But I would tell them to mind where they store it.
Yes, you said in your email to me, perhaps you would like to explain to people about the bad batch of LDN that you took.
Yes, that would be great. We have a vacation home, and when we're not there, we do not leave the heat or the air conditioning on, which then exposes everything in the home to, extreme shifts in temperature. And unfortunately, I had brought some LDN down at the beginning of the year during the winter. And so, of course, it got very cold in the home during the winter months. And then as I took it in the summer, when we weren't there, it was very hot. So it had been exposed to extreme heat and cold. And as a result, we did test some of it afterward, and it had been rendered ineffective. And I took that basically all summer long, which we believe that led into my bad relapse. Okay.
Just so I can understand this, this was capsules you'd left
Correct.
there. Okay.
That's correct.
So how old would the capsules have been at that time anyway?
They would have been about 6 or 7 months old.
Right. So a lesson there for people, isn't it, to make sure that your LDN is probably fresh and stored without
Absolutely.
extreme temperatures. Yeah.
Exactly. Well, I learned it the hard way.
And how did your relapse affect you?
Oh, it was terrible. I ended up with a new lesion on my cerebellum, which resulted in vertigo and nausea and loss of balance and loss of control. Basically, I was very weak, and at that point, fatigue was an issue for me.
Mm-hmm. And now you're back on a fresh batch of LDN. How has that helped you get out of your relapse? Has it helped?
Absolutely. What happened was, during the relapse, they had me take a steroid infusion, and they didn't want me to take LDN and the steroids at the same time. So I went off LDN for approximately a month to 6 weeks. And during that time, I would have difficulty, like, for example, there are 2 steps into my family room, into my living room,
Mm-hmm.
And I couldn't get up those steps without help. And the next day, after going back on LDN, I was able to get back up those steps again.
Wow.
Myself.
That's impressive.
It was amazing. It was amazing.
So how long ago was it now since you had that relapse?
Well, it started in the middle of August and basically lasted until November.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm still rebuilding my strength.
Well, I really hope that you get your strength back and you have a good summer.
Oh, absolutely. I'm looking forward to one. I know that I'm on the right track, and now that I know that where I went wrong with the LDN,
Mm-hmm.
I just think I'm going to get stronger and stronger. And in fact, before this relapse, I was getting stronger and stronger. And I have a pretty advanced case of MS.
Oh, that's very promising, isn't it?
It is.
Well, thank you, Carol, for sharing your story with us. I really do appreciate it.